Let's go ahead and get to the second semifinal. And before we break down the game, let me just start by saying this. You know who the real MVP of Texas Washington was on Monday night in New Orleans Sugar Bowl? It was you. Yes, you, America, staying up until 2 a.m. Eastern time on New Year's Day. First day of the year. I know you're all struggling today here on a Tuesday in the office. You wanted 2024 to be different. You're going to get to the gym. You're going to get to the office early. This is the year things change. And then Texas Washington had us up until 2 a.m. Eastern time. But what's also crazy about this game, I was thinking about this, is that when the four teams were announced, whether you agree the committee got it right or not, I think we all thought we were going to at the very least get two really good games. That's exactly what we got. But we also got the games that we thought we were going to get. Michigan, Alabama, line of scrimmage, physical, mean, tough, whatever. And then Washington, Texas, it goes without saying, just a back and forth shootout. Washington wins on the final play. Great play by the defensive back, by the way. 37-31 is the final score. And when I think about Texas, Washington, listen, there's nothing else for me to say other than that there is, in my opinion, just one story and one story only. This was the national coming out party for Michael Penix. And if you did not know the name before, there is no way you do not know it now. So listen, let me start by saying this. Like, I think there's a lot of people that sit there and say, Torres, what do you mean nobody knows who Michael Penix is? He was a Heisman Trophy finalist. Washington was undefeated. They won the Pac-12. What I'd say is, first of all, calm down. It's January 2nd. Don't need all that anger in 2024. But why I bring it up is because, listen, I love college football. If you listen to this show, you love college football. I'm not arguing that. And I think certainly people have seen, even the casuals have seen Michael Penix in passing, right? They've seen him for a quarter or two against Oregon. The diehards watched Oregon, Utah, whatever. But the casuals probably watched a little bit of the Oregon game. Probably watched maybe even more of the Pac-12 championship game. But this was a national stage, 20 plus million people. The NFL viewers are tuning in. You get 20, 25, 30 million people. We'll see what the final numbers are, but the national semifinals on New Year's Day have historically rated insanely. And I just don't think there is any way that if you love football, you weren't watching that game. And that's why this was the national coming out party. Not just because Michael Penix was in this game, but because I thought he played, you could argue, maybe the greatest game in the history of the college football playoff semifinals. First of all, statistically, it's certainly there. 430 yards passing. Finished, I think, I want to make sure I get the stats right so I don't trip up here. Final stats for Michael Penix. 430 yards passing was the second most in any college football playoff semifinal. Only Joe Burrow against a bad Oklahoma defense had more total yardage. 29 of 38, 11 yards per completion. And if you watch that game, I mean, he just made some of the most beautiful, perfect throws that you have ever seen. There was a touchdown pass. I swear it was a dart from about the 30-yard line. I swear he threw it between like three defenders. It was insane. It was one of the most beautiful throws I've ever seen until later in the game. He hits Rome Adenze, however you say the name. I'm always tripping up over that name. He hits a beautiful over-the-shoulder throw. And the crazy part was Washington needed Michael Penix to be great in this game, and he was. Now, in terms of how it ended, let's get to that, because what was wild about this one, Michigan, Alabama was back and forth. I said it a minute ago. Michigan dominated early. Alabama dominated probably the middle, 75% of the game, not the middle 75%, but probably they dominated about 75% of the second half. That's probably how I should say it. And then obviously Michigan closes out the win. What was wild about the Washington game, Washington was in complete control until they weren't, right? It wasn't that the craziest ending ever. So for people who did not stay up, I'm assuming most of you did, but it was wild because Washington gets the ball back. What is it? About a minute 10, something like that. Texas has 2 timeouts. So Washington smartly, unlike Mike McCarthy on Saturday night for the Dallas Cowboys, by the way, but smartly Washington runs a play on first down, runs the football. Texas calls a timeout. Second play, Washington runs the football. Texas calls a timeout. Third play, Texas is out of timeouts. Washington runs the ball up the middle. And unfortunately, their star running back, Dylan Johnson, got hurt. Now, it was crushing because he is a very good player, but it was also crushing because it stopped the clock. So all of a sudden, Texas doesn't have a timeout. They're going to get the ball back with whatever, 20, 22, 23 seconds left. Now they're getting the ball back with 50 seconds and a chance to really drive the length of the field. Now, before we get to the final possession, let me start by saying this. Much like the Nick Saban final play, I've seen a lot of criticism of Kalen DeBoer there, the head coach at Washington, of like, why didn't you just take a knee and punt the football? Because again, if you take a knee, you avoid injury risk, right? So again, Texas has no timeouts. They can't stop the clock. The only way the clock stops is if there's an injury. Now, one, I would argue that it's dumb that you stop the clock for injury, although I guess there's really nothing you can do. But two, like I saw that pushback on social media. I think it's easy to be a social media armchair analyst. Have you ever actually seen a coach just take a knee with 50 seconds to go? I've never seen it. Unless the other team doesn't have a time, even when the team doesn't have timeouts, if you're going to have to punt the ball, I've never seen a coach just take a knee. I've never seen it. I've seen you take a knee when the clock's about to expire. I've seen you take a knee with 50 seconds left if there's no timeouts and it's second down and you could just take back-to-back knees and the game's over. I've never seen a coach take a knee knowing that they're going to have to punt eventually. So it was weird to me to see the reaction. But obviously, look, Texas gets the ball back with 50 seconds to go. 2 incompletions for Quinn Ewers. Then he hits a beautiful deep ball, sets up a red zone situation. They're in the red zone, couple plays, final play, 1 second left. First of all, that was the crazy part, right? There was the play that the clock shows final, but nobody's running on the field to celebrate. Steve Sarkisian sitting there with his play sheet. So you're sitting there saying, wait a second, I think there's a play left. There is one play. Quinn Ewers, right corner of the end zone, batted away by the defensive back, played perfectly, no penalty, no controversy. I don't think anybody felt like there was a penalty on the play, and Washington wins. When I look at the big picture of the game, a couple things stand out. One, I know I said it a minute ago. I think you can argue that that was the greatest single individual performance in a college football playoff game that we have ever seen from a quarterback from Michael Penix. Because I was thinking about this. So Joe Burrow statistically was better. Joe Burrow had 493 yards, 7 touchdowns for LSU against Oklahoma. Okay. Like that is so absurd. You can't even contextualize it. And by the way, when you have Jamar Chase, you have Justin Jefferson, that helps. Not saying that Joe Burrow wasn't great. And also not saying that Washington and Michael Penix doesn't have maybe 3 NFL wide receivers around him as well. But at the same time, what stood out to me, what's different about this game, by the way, there were other great performances, right? Trevor Lawrence that year against Alabama in the national championship game was unbelievable. But I bring it up because can you ever remember a performance this good where his team needed him to make all those plays, right? Joe Burrow, they beat Oklahoma 63 to 28. And the 28 came late. I mean, I think at one point it was like 56-7 and LSU basically let their foot off the gas. Okay. But I just bring it up because LSU offense was great. Defense was great. They were facing an overmatched opponent, point blank, end of story. And so Joe Burrow was great, but Michael Penix, they needed him to be great on every single play, every single possession. By the way, same with Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence against Alabama. I think people forget. Yes, Clemson won. Yes, Trevor Lawrence was amazing. But guess what? Clemson had an insane defense. Dexter Lawrence was on that team. Clelin Ferrell. I forget the other guy. Christian Wilkins, guy who just got a penalty for the Dolphins the other day. Shout out producer Matt. Produces this show. He's a big Dolphins fan. I know he's not going to forget that play against Dallas a few weeks ago. But I just bring it up because of the fact that like LSU was great across the board and Joe Burrow happened to be great. Clemson was great across the board and Trevor Lawrence happened to be great. Washington needed Michael Penix to be great. And that's why, in my opinion, that might be the best college football playoff semifinal performance that I've ever seen for sure. Maybe college football playoff performance, period. Bigger picture, let me also say this. Noah also deserves a ton of credit. Do we know anything about Kalen DeBoer? Okay, so Kalen DeBoer is the Washington head coach. And I'll be honest, I think I love college football about as much as anybody. I try to study. I try to know everything. I try to be smart when I come on this show. If you're going to spend your time listening to me, it's my job to be educated and informed and hopefully entertaining. Whether you think I'm entertaining or not, whether you think I'm annoying or not, one thing I need to be is informed, okay? But I just bring it up because if Kalen DeBoer, I was thinking about this. If Kalen DeBoer was sitting next to me on an airplane, I don't think I know who he was. Like he could be he could be an insurance salesman from Des Moines. He could be a Wall Street guy. He could be a pediatrician from Texarkana. I don't know. Like he just has the most unassuming personality. But all this guy does is win. First of all, let me start by saying this. Okay, have you seen this guy's resume? So for people who don't know his background, he played at an NAIA school, Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls. I don't know if it's a college, if it's a university, whatever, in South Dakota. He ends up becoming the head coach there. I want to read to you his 5 seasons as head coach at Sioux Falls, okay? 5 seasons, he goes 11-2, gets to the national semifinals. Year 2, he goes 14-0, wins the national championship. Year 3, 13-1, plays for a national championship, loses. 14-0, national champion. 15-0, national champion. This guy went 67-3 over the course of a 5-year run at an NAIA school. Let me just say, 80s, we have administrators and people that work in college sports that listen to this show. Can I give you a piece of advice? If a guy goes 67-3 over a 5-year stretch, just hire him. I don't care the level. I don't care whatever. As a matter of fact, I think you can argue it's more impressive at the NAIA level because I've done a little reading. I think he had like one full-time assistant coach when he was the head coach at Sioux Falls. That coach, by the way, I think was Ryan Grubb, who is still with him to this day. Nick Saban tried to hire him last offseason. So this guy is unbelievable. It takes him, how about this? He leaves Sioux Falls in 2009. It takes him until 2020 to get another head coaching job. By the way, 2009, he was 35 years old, already had 3 natties under his belt. Not bad. Again, he doesn't get another head coaching job until 2020, starts winning at Fresno, goes to Washington. I just think it's one of the coolest stories ever. And I'm just here to say this. I think you could already argue here in 2023, after 2 years at Washington, he goes 11-2 in year 1. He is now 14-0 playing for a national championship in year 2. I think you could argue that he is already one of the best coaches in college football because I watch that team and I know they play a lot of close games and a lot of this, a lot of that. I don't care. By the way, I think a lot of their games were close because, again, they play in bad weather. It's rainy. It's cold. It's windy. This ain't, I'm not going to pick on any specific SEC school, but like the weather that they're playing in, the conditions that they're playing in, they're just so different than what a lot of schools have to deal with. But when I think about this guy, like I just think about his teams, and every time I watch them, they are so well prepared. They don't beat themselves. I think he does as good a job as anybody. And I'm not a scheme expert, X's and O's expert, okay? But I think he does as good of a job as anybody in terms of, heightening his team's strengths and limiting their weaknesses. Like I thought it was very obvious early in the Texas game that he knew they could not run the ball against the front, Texas's front. So what does he do? He just throws a bunch of swing passes out there, and that's basically their run game, short passes to the running back. And so I look at this guy, he's unbelievable. I don't know where he ranks and who he's in the short conversation though, right? I mean, I think if Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, I think Sharon Moore is probably going to get the job. Brian Kelly, think maybe wants the job. I would just offer Kalen DeBoer that the $12 million that you raised for Jim Harbaugh. I just offer that to Kalen DeBoer. I don't think he'd leave, but you got to. If Ryan Day leaves for the NFL, I just offer Kalen DeBoer $12 million. That's unbelievable. So we'll see. By the way, I had my buddy Garrett Carr texting me this. He said, why shouldn't Kalen DeBoer? We talk about Harbaugh as a candidate, Ryan Day as an NFL candidate. Kalen DeBoer, scheme, culture, wins everywhere. I don't know. So it's an interesting thought. I don't want to go on too much further. Really quickly from the